I'll be speaking on antibiotic prophylaxis for urological procedures and management of COPD. I have nothing to disclose. I'll be speaking on the lines of definition, consideration, post factors related to considering a prophylaxis, prophylaxis for different procedures, comparison of prophylaxis in consideration to different guidelines. Then coming to COWT, its definition and impact, treatment, and guidelines on COWT. So let's get started. As far as the surgical site infection is concerned, it may complicate up to 5% of clean extra-abdominal surgery and up to 20% of intra-abdominal procedures. Having said that, UTI is the most common nosocomial infection known to mankind. The surgical site infections cost double what a non-infectious situation may cost. Rehospitalization, ICU care, and mortality significantly increases. So coming to antibiotic prophylaxis. Surgical antimicrobial prophylaxis is the pre-procedural systemic administration of an antimicrobial agent intended to reduce the risk of post-procedural local and systemic infections. So what do you consider? You consider patient factors, ability of the patient or the host to respond to any kind of bacterial invasion, and then procedural factors, like what is the kind of procedure that one is going to do, and what is the magnitude of bacterial invasion expected at the operator site. Also, what is the potential of morbidity of the infection that the said procedure is going to cause. Surgical antimicrobial prophylaxis is recommended only when the potential benefits exceed the risk of anticipated cost. So once you've decided that you need to give prophylaxis, what agent do you choose? The said agent should be effective against the disease-relevant bacterial flora at the operative site. It should be cost-effective, convenient to administer, and should be safe. So, three typical antibiotic groups that fit the bill are cephalosporins, fluoroquinolones, and aminoglycosides. They have their half-lives are long. They are inexpensive and rarely associated with allergic reactions. Fluoroquinolones and aminoglycosides can be used in beta-lactam allergy. What should be the duration of antibiotic prophylaxis? This is very important to know because traditionally the antibiotics were given over a period of days for a conventional procedure. But now they should extend throughout the period in which the bacterial invasion will be facilitated, or during the risk period. That is, should be the only period where an antibiotic prophylaxis should be administered. But there is a confusion. In urological procedure, there are two subgroups of disinfections or sterilization. One is high level of disinfection and other is sterilization. We still have areas in the world where the high level disinfection or use of dips like Cidex are still practiced. So the antibiotic prophylaxis, will it hold true in such situations, remains to be debated. Longer duration of antimicrobials need to be considered when you are placing a prosthetic material, if there is an existing infection, and if there are tubes that need manipulation. What are the host-related factors that one is talking about? Of course, comorbidities, diabetes, cardiac illnesses, COPDs, neurovascular illnesses, they need to be considered. Is your patient on a chronic corticosteroid therapy? Does he require chemotherapy? Is he immunodeficient? What is the nutritional status of your patient? Does he have stents or internalized or externalized catheters? Is he a smoker? Does he have any kind of renal anomalies? Pregnancy is an important consideration. Are you going to do a scrotal or a perineal incision? And is your patient going to require prolonged hospitalization? This must be considered and the prophylaxis tailored to the needs. So before we start talking about prophylaxis in particular, we should just revise the class of wounds. Class 1 wound will be a wound which does not even touch the GU tract. So it is like inguinal or scrotal procedures. Or a RPLND, adrenalectomy for that matter. Class 2 wounds are clean contaminated wounds where you enter the GU tract but in a controlled fashion, like you are doing a partial cystectomy, a prostatectomy, endoscopic procedure. Class 3 is a situation where you enter the urinary tract, but the situation is a little uncontrolled. Means you're doing a PCNL and the stone is infected. You're dealing with a Stuvite stone. You're doing a truss biopsy. The class 4 will be open trauma or abscess, where you require debridement. And the separate class, that needs to be considered is prosthetic implantations. So with this background, let us go to site-specific prophylaxis. So if you're talking about lower tract, cystoscopy is the basic urological procedure that everybody needs to discuss. If you're doing some minor manipulation, biopsy, perforation, probably a prophylaxis is not indicated. But if these patients have some high risk features, then you can use a first line agent of Ceftriaxone or trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole or amoxiclav in a single dose. The second generation will be first or second generation cephalosporin and aminoglycoside. Remember, the likely organisms that you are going to encounter will be E. coli, Proteus, Klebsiella, and rarely Enterococci. One more thing that I want to bring out to the audience notice here is that a lot of cystoscopies are done for CA bladder surveillance. These patients are on chronic BCG. BCG is associated with a lot of secondary infections in the bladder. So this is one thing that one needs to consider when considering prophylaxis. So coming to transurethral procedures like TURP and TURPT. So as far as the TURP is concerned, there is no confusion. Prophylaxis is indicated in all the cases. It is a clean contaminated surgery. And the agent of choice for the first line is trimethoprim and sulfamethoxazole or a cefazolin in a single dose. The second line can be aminoglycoside plus minus ampicillin and amoxiclavir. The spectrum of the microorganism will be same as the previous line. Coming to other lower tract procedures like brachytherapy or cryotherapy, yes, prophylaxis is indicated in all cases. The agent of choice in the first line will be cefazolin, in the second line clindamycin, and you need to use only a single dose. In this particular setting, you can rarely get Enterococci and Staph aureus as you will be going through the skin. So you have to mind that while planning the prophylaxis. When you come to TRUS biopsy, the most debated and the most talked about antimicrobial prophylaxis in urological setting is for TRUS biopsy. Prophylaxis is definitely indicated in all cases. It is a contaminated procedure. First line agents used are first, second, or third generation cephalosporins, plus minus aminoglycosides. Fluoroquinolones are also a choice, but as far as our experience or our setting goes, the fluoroquinolone resistance is about 30% upwards. It has to be administered in a single dose. The organisms likely to be encountered are the normal geoflora and also anaerobes. Moving ahead to the upper tract, ureteroscopy. Is prophylaxis indicated? Yes. If you are doing a therapeutic procedure, definitely yes. But for diagnostic cases, there is still a dilemma. The first line agents that can be used are first or second generation cephalosporins or trimethoprim and sulfamethoxazole, a single dose. Second line can be aminoglycoside plus ampicillin or amoxicillin clavulanate. Moving ahead to PCNL, another area of debate is prophylaxis for PCNL, because at the outset, it is very, very difficult to ascertain whether the stone will be infective or not. So there is a debate between a single shot antibiotic and antibiotic to less than 24 hours. But one thing is certain that all of these patients do require a prophylactic antibiotic. It is a clean contaminated surgery. It can be a first line agent of first or second generation cephalosporin can be used. Aminoglycoside plus minus metronidazole and clindamycin can be used. The second line will be ampicillin plus sulbactam. The organism you are likely to encounter are the routine geoflora, and associated Staph aureus should also be considered. Now consider surgeries which will not violate urinary tract. You are talking about open laparoscopic or robotic surgeries which include adrenalectomy, pelvic lymphadenectomy, retroperitoneal lymphadenectomy. So on all these cases, prophylaxis is indicated, but it's a clean surgery. You do not enter the GU tract. So you could use cefazolin as a first line, as a single shot, or clindamycin as a second line. You must think about Staph aureus in these particular cases. Now consider surgery without violation of urinary tract, like penile surgery, circumcision, or penile biopsy. Here again, prophylaxis is controversial, likely not required. But if these patients have some high risk factors, then consider using cefazolin as a first line. What about controlled entry into urinary tract? Consider the procedure like urethroplasty. Prophylaxis is definitely indicated. First line will be cefazolin and second line will be cefoxitin or ampicillin plus sulbactam. Again, in these particular surgeries, one must pay attention to staph aureus. Now consider consideration of controlled entry into urinary tract. You're doing a pyeloplasty or a radical prostatectomy or a partial cystectomy. Now, this can be done either in an open milieu or laparoscopic or robotic. Prophylaxis is indicated in all these cases, and it's very important. At least a single dose of cefazolin or trimethoprim and sulfamethoxazole, or a second line of aminoglycosides plus metronidazole or clindamycin. Ampicillin and sulbactam can also be used. Organisms likely to be encountered will be E. coli, Proteus, Klebsiella, and rarely Enterococci. So what about surgery involving small bowel? The conduits, augmentation, ileal replacement, all these cases require prophylaxis. Cefazolin being the first line, and the second line will be aminoglycoside plus metronidazole or clindamycin. Cefuroxime can also be used with, and there is also a choice of aminopenicillins with beta-lactamase inhibitors. In our setting, it is always a third generation cephalosporin as a single shot. So what about large bowel? Large bowel have a large anaerobic load. Colonic conduits, ureterosigmoidostomy. Fortunately, these group of surgeries are far less in the urological spectrum. But if you were to use prophylaxis, it will be a single dose of cefazolin with metronidazole or ceftriaxone with metronidazole. Moving ahead to prosthetic devices like penile implants, artificial sphincters, sacral neuromodulators. Yes, this is another subgroup which definitely requires prophylaxis. And here the prophylaxis should be given more than one dose, actually to the duration of about 24 hours. And the first line will be aminoglycoside plus second generation cephalosporin or a vancomycin. Second line will be ampicillin, sulbactam, piperacillin, tazobactam, ticagrelin, clavulanate, or aminopenicillin with beta-lactamase inhibitor. Remember, apart from the routine organisms of GU tract, you are dealing with staph aureus, possibility of MRSA, and also anaerobes and fungus have been reported, though they need not be covered routinely. What about inguinal-scrotal surgeries like high inguinal orchidectomy, vasectomy reversal, hydrocelectomy? They are all these surgeries need to have a prophylaxis. Single dose cefazolin is good enough. What about vaginal surgeries? This is one surgery which requires special mention because the organism encountered in this particular surgery are actually totally different from the normal urothelial or genitourinary flora. That is Staph aureus, Streptococcus, Enterococcus, and vaginal anaerobes. So you can start with a second generation cephalosporin as the first dose, or a second line will be ampicillin and sulbactam in a single dose. Well, there is a lot of controversy about ESWL, which is now slowly start to find its place, or the controversy is actually coming to rest, where most of the institutes now feel that ESWL actually does not require routine prophylaxis, only in cases if there are risk factors present, then first or second generation cephalosporin or trimethoprim plus sulfamethoxazole should be used. Coming to a short comparison between all the guidelines. So let's consider cystoscopy. Definitely prophylaxis is not required as far as all the guidelines are concerned, European, American, Japanese, and Canadian. Only when high risk features are there, you can consider giving some kind of the prophylaxis. TURP, again, there is no controversy. All the guidelines will suggest prophylaxis. TURBT, EAU says that there is weak recommendation. Otherwise, others will mention that the prophylaxis is recommended. Regarding ESWL, nobody recommends prophylaxis unless there are high-risk features. Similarly, for ureteroscopy and percutaneous nephrolithotomy, there is no controversy. All the organizations recommend a prophylaxis. So briefly coming to the guidelines and what we can take home from that, EAU guidelines. So about 4 out of 11 RCT said that there was no benefit of antibiotic prophylaxis for any kind of urodynamic procedure. 5 trials actually showed benefit for antibiotic prophylaxis for cystoscopy, but 2 did not. Also, there is one major consideration, like I previously mentioned, that most of the cystoscopies that you do are diagnostic cystoscopies or office flexible cystoscopies, and many of these patients have had BCG cystitis in the past, which predispose these patients to secondary infection. These subgroup of patients should definitely be considered for a prophylaxis. Then regarding ESWL, we know that there is no benefit of a prophylaxis. Two meta-analyses found no evidence of benefit for antibiotic prophylaxis prior to ureteroscopy in reducing the rate of clinical UTI. However, the rate of bacteriuria was reduced. A meta-analysis of 5 RCT demonstrated moderate level of evidence that antibiotic prophylaxis was associated with statistically significant reduction in post-procedural UTI following PCNL. So, antibiotic prophylaxis is a yes for PCNL. Coming to TURP, a systematic review of 39 RCTs concluded that it is beneficial. So, definitely it should be used. A systematic review of 2 RCTs found no benefit while using prophylaxis for TURBT. Therefore, EAU says that it is questionable. Another interesting thing is that meta-analysis of 6 trials showed that use of rectal povidone iodine preparation before biopsy leads to decrease in infectious complications. It is an institutional practice at NPUH to put in a betadine suppository prior to the biopsy, about half an hour prior to the biopsy. Meta-analysis of 11 studies showed that infectious complications reduce when antimicrobial prophylaxis is used for TRUS biopsy. So briefly, EU recommendations: urodynamic cystoscopy, ESWL, do not use prophylaxis. When it comes to ureteroscopy, the evidence is weak, but do use at present. For PCNL, you must use. For TURP, the recommendation is again strong. For TURBT, it is a questionable recommendation. And for TRUS biopsy, it is a strong recommendation. Okay, moving to the second part of my talk, which is CAUTI. Catheter-associated UTI refers to UTI occurring in a person whose urinary tract is currently catheterized or has been catheterized within the past 48 hours. So what are the hard facts about CAUTI? 20% of the patients with hospital-acquired bacteremias actually arise from urinary tract. The mortality of this patient can be as high as 10%. Bacteriuria with the catheter can be anywhere between 3 to 8%. As the duration of catheterization increases, so does the incidence of CAUTI. Urinary catheterization actually perturbs the whole immune setup or host defense mechanism. Urinary catheters of any kind facilitate colonization by improving the attachment or adhesions of the bacteria to the foreign body. The uroepithelial mucosa is disrupted by these catheters, leading to increased chance of adhesion. There is always some kind of residual urine which is hidden behind the catheter bulb, which can increase the chance of pooling and infection. Often these infections are polymicrobial and multi-drug resistant. How do you make a clinical diagnosis of these infections? Patients will have all the clinical signs and symptoms of infection: fever, rigor, malaise, lethargy, flank pain, renal angle tenderness, hematuria, pelvic discomfort. And there'll be a lot of dysuria, urgency, and suprapubic pain in patients whom catheter has just been removed. The lab diagnosis of CAUTI is diagnosed by microbial growth of about 1,000 colony-forming units per ml in one or more bacterial species in a single catheter urine specimen, or a midstream voided urine specimen from a patient whose catheter has been removed in last 48 hours. Pyuria is not diagnostic of CAUTI. So what are the EAU guidelines for diagnosis? So patient with indwelling or suprapubic catheters become carriers of asymptomatic bacteriuria with antibiotic treatment showing no benefit for them. In catheterized patients, the presence of odor or cloudy urine is not a criteria to make a diagnosis of CAUTI. Microbiologically, CAUTI is defined as a microbial growth of 1,000 colony-forming units per ml. So what are the recommendations? Do not carry out routine urine culture in asymptomatic catheterized patients. Do not use pyuria to differentiate between asymptomatic and asymptomatic bacteriuria and CAUTI. Do not use presence of cloudy urine or odor to differentiate between the two. So how do you treat them? So start treating them with antibiotics for about 7 days for early responders and extend the treatment to up to 14 days for the people who respond late. This is regardless of the catheterization. A 5-day regime using levofloxacin has been described using a dose of 750 milligrams per day. 3-day antimicrobial regimen only for infection limited to the lower tract can be considered. Whenever doing this, replace the catheter. The catheter should be replaced before starting an antibiotic. This will reduce the risk of subsequent cowty. So what do you do to prevent cowty? So treat the catheter-associated UTI according to recommendation. Treat a culture prior to initiating antimicrobial therapy. Do not treat asymptomatic bacteriuria. Treat catheter-associated asymptomatic bacteriuria only when you are going to do some kind of urointervention. Replace or remove the indwelling catheter before starting antimicrobial therapy. Do not use antiseptic or antimicrobials at the catheter, like ciprofloxacin drops after a urethroplasty. Do not use prophylactic antimicrobial to prevent catheter-associated UTI. The duration of the catheter should be minimal. So when you come to treating these patients, you have to start an intravenous agent if the patient requires hospitalization. Though a lot has been said about quinolones, but quinolones, at least in our setup, in most of the Indian setups, should be discouraged because the resistance rate to quinolones or ciprofloxacin is to the tune of 40%. If the patient is hypersensitive to penicillin, then a cephalosporin can still be prescribed. If the patient has complicated UTI with severe symptoms, empirically, treatment should cover ESBL producing organisms. Intravenous levofloxacin 750 milligrams for 5 days is non-inferior to a 14-day regimen. Okay, so briefly speaking, you should start with a combination of amoxicillin or aminoglycoside. A second generation cephalosporin plus an aminoglycoside can also be used. A third generation cephalosporin intravenously as an empirical treatment for complicated UTI with systemic symptoms is a good consideration. Like I said, use of ciprofloxacin, at least in most centers of our country, should be discouraged as there is high incidence of resistance. Obviously, try to correct the urological abnormality. What about antibiotic prophylaxis after catheter removal? Do not routinely advise this, as the benefit of a continuous prophylaxis after catheter removal is minuscule. So what are my take-home messages? Prophylactic antibiotics should be used as per prescribed protocol. All prophylactic antibiotics should be administered in accordance with the local bacteriological profile, which is very, very important. Prophylaxis can be avoided in through urodynamic studies. Only surgeries like prosthesis and as per some guidelines, PCNL may require more than a single dose. Cowty is a form of uncomplicated UTI and needs to be treated with precision. Cowty can increase the cost, morbidity, and cause mortality. Thank you for patient listening, and thank you for the opportunity.